Hey everybody, it's David Gordon from TheaterMania here. It is Monday. I don't know what day it is. It's Monday, June 29th. They all blend in. I'm here with Jonathan McCrory, the Artistic Director of National Black Theater, a great theater that everybody should check out. And Jonathan's going to be telling us about their plans in store for this month, which is Founders Month. So tell us about that.
So, thank you so much for having
My pleasure. Thank you for coming.
It's great to be able to amplify and be able to tell the legacy of NBT and be able to actually talk about our beautiful founder, Dr. Barbara Ann Teer, and the legacy that she gave and provided for us as a community and as a country. So on June 18th was officially our founder's birthday, and we have always known that as Founders Day at NBT. Unfortunately, our founder transitioned roughly, if I'm not mistaken, it was almost 10 maybe even 12 years ago in 2008 from a untimely health condition, and that basically set a blueprint for Sade, her daughter, to be the CEO, to be appointed as the CEO of NBT, and then for us, then I slowly came on a few years later, and we've been slowly building together with the rest of the staff, the amazing staff that we have, the vision. So Founders Month is a slew of programming connected to illuminating Dr. Teer's mission, vision, and values, really allowing for us to look at what does it mean to create an oasis amongst the burning building that could be considered the American capitalistic system. Also, what does it mean to train the next generation, right? What does it mean to fully train? So we had a conversation Thursday, which was around the legacy and around how do you pass the torch on with that legacy. And then the conversation this week will be around how do we, with the artists that we've trained, what are they doing in the world? And also, what does the world look like for them now in this midst of the COVID-19 and also in the midst of this movement for Black lives? And then we'll have another conversation called The Revival is Coming, looking at Black joy as a space of revival and rejuvenation. And then we'll conclude the month with a conversation that we're scheduling to do every month called The Download. And that conversation will be with Sade, who's the CEO of NBT, myself, Nia Farrell, who is our interactive social media manager, and then also with Chelsea, who is moderating all of the conversations to really talk about hot topics, things that are happening in the country, and really having this thing called The Download, downloading on what's happening and how we as a community need to be ready, be able to digest, but also be able to chart a path forward as we think about and as we navigate through these unprecedented times.
Yeah. So what was NBT working on when theaters got shut down?
Yeah. So National Black Theater is really working from a space of digital work. So we're looking at, with some of our commissions, we're actually looking at turning them into radio plays. What does it mean to produce them as radio plays? Yeah, you know what I mean? There was this phenomenon that we used to utilize our imagination to think up and dream up what the world of the theater would be. And people would invest in the full soundscape and full sound design of like the steps walking and the door creaking and all of that kind of like retro style. And we're gonna go back to that technology, back to those roots, and invite our community to go back to that imaginative space, and hopefully awaken kind of a love and a thirst for us to be able to hear stories in a different kind of way. And we're also going to be doing a series of brand new digitally commissioned works that are going to be centered around, commissioned by Black women artists, centering around the right to vote. Using Shirley Chisholm's infamous phrase, unbossed and unbought. We are asking our artists to really look at what does it mean to be unbossed and unbought and reclaiming our vote, knowing that November is a very important time, and how are we going to make sure our community is well resourced with the skill sets and tools to know what this moment means, like the voters' rights. What are things that we shifting? How do you vote in the midst of COVID? Knowing that as they are predicting a flare-up might happen. What does that mean? And what does that mean also for a community that it has never left our community, and it's actually really deeply impacted Black and Brown communities. So really creating a space for us to talk to us, and giving Black women the skills and tools and resources to be amplified to help guide us as our North Star, as they have for so many years.
That's so cool, and such a great project, especially now.
It sounds
like a really important project, especially now, and especially reading how, you know, all of the states outside our little New York bubble just start like redistricting the voting lines, and it always disproportionately affects like Black and other.
Exactly. No. And the other thing that many people just have to also understand, and like thinking about our programming and what MBT tries to do really cognitively well with, is think about the present pulse. How are we taking care of the pulse of our community and giving and utilizing art as a way to amplify it? And the other thing that we're doing, I forgot to mention this, is that this marks the 100th year centennial of women's right to vote, and partnered with Park Avenue Armory and 10 other nonprofit organizations around the city of New York. We are going to try to bring, and we are bringing, 100 women together digitally to have a conversation around 100 years, 100 women, women's right to vote. And on August 18th, there'll be a documentary released that has all of these 100 voices amplified and uplifted, so that we can have a collective conversation around that timely and important topic.
That's so cool. All right, so this is sort of a two-pronged question, and it's a bit long, but so I guess I'll start with, how do you run a theater in COVID? Like, how do you do it? Like, how do you
run a theater in COVID? I mean,
right.
how do you? I want to ask this: how do you stay sane in COVID? Like, I mean, like COVID-19 has been, and I say this with as much understanding that it's ravaged some more than others, but it's a great equalizer.
Yeah.
It is a thing that turned this hierarchical nature, this vertical nature that we were all going on, and totally made it horizontal and said, hey, this idea of capitalism, this idea of corporate gain, this idea of hanging on top of each other, that's not necessarily going to work anymore. You have to actually deal with you have to now deal with some of the very aspects that have been cutting us off as humans. So what I would have to say, running a theater in the midst of COVID has been humbling, has been disturbing, has been awakening, has been refreshing also. There is an element of running this theater now than when we initially started, or before COVID and during COVID, that we are now connected to a community that we never were before. There's this call called the 3 p.m. phone call. I don't know if you know about it, but it's a phone call that brings together about 250 nonprofit organizations around the city, New York alone, from all different disciplines, coming together to have a collective conversation about how do we triage this moment. And so we've been doing that ever since COVID began. And so that's been really, really profound, because in one phone call, you're talking to organizations that you never truly got to connect with before, from the Met to we were connected to Park Avenue Armory, but to like the Bronx Museum, like zoo, like the zoo, like the Botanica, like disciplines that never really found the need to talk to one another, because of this crisis, or this moment of opportunity, this unprecedented time, really helped to create the vehicle for us to be able to talk to one another in a kind of a compassionate, nuanced way. So that's one way, is like collegial, how is running a theater is really leaning on your colleagues. in a awesome way. Another way that we've been leaning on our colleagues and been able to learn crowd sharing, like our information, is Sade and I joined this MD, this managing director's phone call for off-Broadway theaters. And that's been really, really beautiful to be able to kind of lean into that wealth knowledge. And then also I have participated in an artistic director phone call that happens every few weeks in the morning, and that's also been beautiful. I think how do you run how do you run a theater in COVID? You listen.
Yeah.
How do you run a theater in COVID? You pivot. How do you run a theater in COVID? You have a lot of compassion, and the compassion has to start with yourself, because as I was talking to you before this, before we started going live, this is relentless on a lot of levels. This is almost a new way of being, and digital is kind of subversive and kind of a slippery snake, because you never really know when to cut it off.
Right.
Because unlike when we were going normal, there was like I had to get to another event. I had to get to another meeting. And in the realm of COVID, you're screening away. It's just like, can't you just press click? Can't you just like click to the next meeting, click to the next meeting? And in the midst of that, there has to be, you're human. You have to drink. You have to take a shower. You have to eat.
You have to just turn off.
You have to literally turn off and then turn on your personal life.
Yeah.
Like your relationship to the sun has to be different than just your relationship to a screen.
Right. How is the National Black Theater responding to the Black Lives Matter movement, which has been lighting up the streets over the past month? Like, what is the theater doing with that?
Yeah, I mean, so we're our destination that has been fighting or been in concert or illuminating, amplifying Black lives since our foundation, right? So this isn't a wake up call for necessarily us. This is just a normal day in the fact. Unfortunately, it's a normal day inside of the construct of who we are and why we exist. I somewhat think that James Baldwin has a beautiful and also heart-wrenching quote, a part of I'm Not Your Negro, and talking about there is a psychosis that America has to reckon with of why it has established the psyche of the N-word. I don't want to say it because I don't know how unfriendly we can be, but that psyche is what America's engrossed with, married with.
Yeah.
And until America really reckons with that real like marriage that doesn't feel so friendly, there will always be a need for alternative spaces like National Black Theater. There will always be a need for alternative spaces because the American psyche is about dissecting and overpowering and capitalizing off of the traumatic weight, pain, and oppression of another human from another cultural, potentially undominant cultural background. So MBT has responded by just doing what we do, staying committed to our work. Our protest is in our ability to thrive. Our protest is in our ability to stay nimble and stay very focused on the here and right now. So our work is based on that and predicated on that. And we just think that we are doing our job by maintaining that mantle, addressing the call of the community to double down on our residency programs, addressing the call of the community to create safe spaces for gathering to happen. So I would just say that these are ways in which we are creating spaces for the Black Lives Matter, the movement for Black lives to continue. However, I will say that MBT, ever since its founding, has been in sync with this current moment because the very foundation of where we come from is about creating autonomous, fully free and liberated spaces for the Black body, which I feel like is what the movement for Black lives is asking and requesting for.
Yeah. You hit on something before. I want to talk about the residency programs at your theater. And because I know there's a producing legacy that's accepting applications or was just accepting.
Yeah. So
yeah, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, I can talk about that for sure. So on July 1, so we have a residency program. So we have a 3-pronged residency program, and I'll get to the actual producing residency. We have it's all about shifting the point of access for Black artists. So from directors to producers, which I'll talk about, and playwrights. They are part of a Soul series residency. And each one of them is supports different disciplines. So the producer residency program gives one Black cultural producer, and I use that cultural producer keenly because we are supporting the evolution of this idea that producers are only about money. That producers are also about generating space for culture to be illuminated, and that we can support we can help to enhance and also evolve and shift this notion of producing by just giving it a different lens and actually not and giving it a more holistic name of potentially what it does and create less barriers. So on July 1, the application process will close down for a producing program that will give a producing fellow up to a $10,000 stipend to be able to shadow under National Black Theater for a full season to kind of learn how we produce work. It's going to be interesting because a lot of that work's going to be digital. So how do we use for digital work? And who knows, by the time we finally, it's a 10-month residency. By the time we get done with, in the midst of the residency in 2021, we might be doing stuff in person. So like, what does it mean to be a cultural producer in this time frame and in this landscape? What does it mean to create healthy, holistic spaces to help people of Indigenous backgrounds and of cultural backgrounds to show up? And they will be responsible, whoever this producer is, they will be responsible for producing some of our events, i.e. if we are developing a musical, helping us to develop the workshop for that musical, and or one of our micro commissions, which will allow them to understand what it means to produce multidisciplinary, historically responsive work.
That's amazing. It's so cool.
I think it's cool.
It's really.
I mean, we have books for them. We have books that we provide as far as learning. There's a journal that we provide so that they can journal throughout this process. So it's actually, I mean, I like to coin the residencies as a dream MFA program, kind of stating that I'm here to I'm like, a great MFA program is not about necessarily, and from my vantage point, it's not about teaching you how not to be you, but teaching you how to get closer to illuminating the best of you. And so what the best aspect of you. And so that's what I hope our residency programs are providing for folks, is the opportunity to illuminate the best aspects of them.
I want to leave you with the question of, for you, Jonathan, as an artist, what does the job of artistic director mean to you? Like, what kind of responsibility do you feel as an artistic director of a theater that has such a history as National Black Theater?
Yeah, so I actually don't like the title artistic director.
Okay.
I use the term creative doula.
Sure.
I feel like artistic director feels too heavy and actually too Eurocentric for me. And the idea
it is like the person that runs the build. Like, you think of it as like running a building as opposed to putting together.
Yeah, like in the ground. And like I'm not trying to take away the fact that I am doing that part as well. But like what I really am being the intermediary between creative imagination and manifestation. And I like to understand that I am helping to steward the manifestation of the creative imagination that flows inside of folks. And so what I will say is that the practice of doing that is not an easy practice, to be very honest. It's a practice that takes a lot of diligence and a lot of care. I have to take care of myself as much as I take care of others. It is being of the space of highest service, and it is challenging a lot of the notions of how I'm supposed to show up in the world. As this artistic leader inside of the community, it is challenging a lot of the notions of that. And it's asking me to be humble, to it's asking me to be humble in the ways in which that, like, how do I grow in my spiritual practice? Because I think of it as, I think artistic work is a spiritual work.
Sure.
How do I grow in my spiritual practice? Also, how do I grow in my own understanding of the limitations of my vantage point? Like, what do I see? There are holes I think that we all have, and latent in how, like, as a cis Black man, there are ways in which that I see the world from a limited scope. How am I, if I'm going to actually own the space of this seat, how am I challenging those notions of my POV to make sure that I see more? I create space for more, and I create loving spaces for more, so that the next generation can do more, and can actually take this position that I hopefully have stewarded to a good space, and run and do things that I could never have done because I was focused on X, Y, and Z. But I've done the work, so they don't have to worry about X, Y, and Z. They now can go to A, B, 1, 2, 3. They can go to, like, ellipses, like, you know what I mean? They can go to the other spaces that I was able to even fathom because I had to get these other fundamental groundworking things put into place.
Jonathan, thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to flash up. That's the Twitter handle at NatBlackTheater. And this is the website. You can look up all of their initiatives. And thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you again, Jonathan. Take care.
Have a good one. Bye.